So I'm starting recording. We are starting from the project that we left in week 3. Right, if you go to content, week 3, you have May pilot 2. That's the last version that we had, right? That's our starting point. If you take a look at what's in the project, open the main scene, you should be able to move your plane left to right with arrows and with A and D. You also can detect the collision with island, right? Right now, we're just printing collision to the console. We have some music. We have some sound effects, right? That's our starting point. What we'll use for our enemies and also for animations is a sprite pack. Sprite pack 2D. If you search for that, sorry, in Asset Store, this one is the package that we'll use today, and also in a few other labs. So I will download it right now and include in my project. Right, import. I'll be using 2 elements from this pack. I'll be using a rocket, and that will be my enemy, and I'll be using animation for explosion. Okay, so let's start from adding an enemy to our game. So let's go to the scene. In the project, I should have a folder called sprites with all imported sprites, and there is one called rocket sprite. This one. In the beginning, we have been playing with the pixel per ratio unit, and all our sprites are having this ratio set to 1. If you take a look at those that we downloaded, they all have 100, which means that if you just drag and drop your rocket to the scene, it's quite tiny, right? What we'll have to do, we'll have to modify that. Let's say 1. Let's apply changes. I'll be also using explosion, those yellow clouds. I'll do the same thing so I don't have to remember about it later. Right now, if I drag it, it's big, right? So I will scale it down to the size that I need. That will be more or less okay. 0.2 will be our scale, right? I have to also turn it so it points downwards. So -90 is my rotation around Z axis, right? That's our rocket. Let's call it also rocket, so we know what we are talking about. First step, to detect that I'm colliding with this rocket, I will need to add the collider, right? Rocket has this weird shape, so the polygon collider probably will be the best match. And because we are moving our plane and everything else with the transform, not with physics, not with forces, we'll make this collider a trigger, right? Okay, so that's the configuration of our enemy. Now let's make our enemy moving. We have to add a script. First of all, make sure that we are using the tool that we want to use. File. Preferences. I want to use mono. Okay, and I'm adding the script. My script will be called rocket controller. I will add this script to the rocket, right? Drag and drop. Here it is. I will open it. and start writing my code. The script itself will be very similar to the one that we used for islands. Right? This rocket will be moving more or less in the same way. We'll have speed, and we'll have few other elements that will look very similar. What will be different about the rocket is the fact that the way how it moves will be a little bit more random. So let's start with some variables that we'll need. What we want to have control over from Unity, so that's why I'm using serialized fields. We want to have access to the speed boundaries, right? So minimum and maximum speed, right? Minimum x speed, and that will be float. Let's say right now it will be 5. Float max x speed, let's say 10. It should be also serialized field, and we'll have the same thing for y. For the other axis, right? So for y minimum and y maximum. Around y it will be 5 and 10. Around x, because we'll be moving either left or right, it will be -2 and 2. Because we will be moving in opposite directions. That's why the sign is different for minimum and maximum speed. We also need a few things that are private to this class. Transform, of course. We'll need the current speed, vector 2. This is different. If you remember, in island, we were setting the speed from outside. Here, the speed will be random, right? So I'm not exposing the speed itself. I'm exposing the boundaries for the speed. Okay, and the last thing, another vector, current position. We'll take current position from the object. We'll take the transform in the start function. So game object dot get component transform. And another thing that we'll do in transform, we'll be calling a reset function. Reset. Reset function does not exist yet, and we'll add it right now. Public void reset. Reset will do a few things. First of all, it will move the rocket to the top, the same way that the reset function does it for islands. But it will also change the speed, right? It will draw new values for the speed. So let's do that. Let's calculate our new speed. Float x speed is equal to random.range in x, max x speed, float y speed, it will be equal to random range, and again, mean y speed, max y speed. This is our randomized. These are our randomized values for speed. The speed itself will be new vector 2. So the current speed will be equal to new vector 2 x speed and y speed. That's one thing. The other thing is we'll have to reset the position of our rocket. And again, we'll do a little bit of randomization, because we don't want rockets to go downwards always on the same line, right? We want to move them left to right a little bit randomly. Again, our new position, float x, will be equal to random range. And we have to find these two values that will pass here, right? So the values for this guy will be between more or less minus 280, and on the other side it's symmetrical, so it's 280. Right, let's go to the script. Minus 280, 280. That's my x. So the position, transform dot position, will be equal to new vector 2 x. What is y? Again, we have to go back and check. Y meaning just above the viewport, right? So it's 490, 460, let's say. 460. What we can do here, we can also add some delay so they don't spawn always at the same time. We can push them a little bit up, so we have some delay before they appear in the view. We can add a random value, random range, let's say between 0 and 100. That's my reset function. This reset function is called on start, but it will be also called in update, right? So let's look at the update function now. First thing that we have to do in update is updating our current position, right? So transform dot position is where we are right now. Our current position minus equal current speed is where we want to be, right? That's the change. Now we can apply this change. Position equals current position. But if we are too far down, we have to reset, right? So we have to check. We have to check if current position dot y is less or equal to what? less or equal minus 450. Right? If that's true, it means that we have to reset. We can save this script, build, to check if we don't have any issues, any errors, and go back to Unity, hit the play button and see what happens. Right, we have those rockets coming from different directions with different speed. Also, what you can see right now, if I'm colliding with the rocket or with the island, it looks all the same for me, right? I'm reporting a collision. Another thing that you probably noticed is that our rocket sometimes goes under the islands. Looks weird, which means that we have to modify the position of the rocket in the layer. Playing as position in the layer equals to 2. We can do the same thing for our rocket, or we can put it higher. It's up to you, right? It depends how you want to animate that. I'm setting it into the same layer, same order, right? So it will be 2. We have our rocket configured, so that's a good point to save it as a prefab. Let's do that. Bang, done, right? Drag and drop, that's simple. And now, to distinguish islands from rockets, we'll use tags. Tags are here in the corner, in the inspector, right below the name of the game object. I'll be working with prefabs, and I will be assigning those tags to prefabs, because right now I have, for example, 2 islands in the scene. I want all of them to be tagged the same way, right? So if I do it through the prefab, I will get actually that result. How to add a tag? You click on the combo box, and you can select option Add Tag. You have some tags that are predefined, but we want to create our own. Add tag. The list is empty. We'll create 2 new tags. One will be enemy, and the other one will be island. I'm done. I have 2 tags added. I'm selecting the rocket prefab. I'm selecting enemy tag from the list. Then I'm selecting an island prefab and tagging it with island tag. Now, if you take a look at the objects in the scene, they got those tags automatically, right? And now each island and each rocket that you add to the scene will have the tag added. Now, it's time to use those tags, right? So we'll go to the playing collision script. In onTrigger enter 2D, that's the function that detects the collisions, right? Detects the fact that our plane is flying over something. We have to modify this code. We'll check if other dot game object dot tag is equal to, well, the first one is island, so let's start with island. Make sure that you're closing all the braces. If this is island, then I want to say that this is an island, collision with island, play the sound, and later I will add points here. Else, the collision may be with enemy. Right, let's copy this. Collision may be with enemy. I will log the fact that I'm colliding with an enemy. I'll also do one thing. I want this enemy to disappear, right? So, other game object, get component. I know this is a rocket, and rocket has a rocket controller script, right? Rocket controller. Script is another component of the game object. So I can use this function, and I can call the reset function from this script. What it will do exactly the same thing that happens when the rocket goes to the bottom of the screen, right? Pulls it back to the top. Later on, we'll add animation also to that point. Okay. Save. And let's test. Now in the console, I should see that I'm colliding with island or with enemy. Also, islands stay, enemy disappears when I collide with them. Yes. Sorry? I just want to see the end of the line. Okay, our next step will be adding a script that will do two things. First, it will keep track of points and lives. Second, it will update user interface. So we'll build user interface first. We'll add all the labels and buttons that we need in our game. And then we'll add script that will be controlling the behavior, right? So let's switch back and let's start adding UI elements. UI elements are in game object UI. That's the whole list of UI elements that you can add. The root element for UI will be always canvas. You can add it separately, right? You can select it from the list. If you add anything else to your game, canvas will be added anyways, and the event system will be added anyways automatically. Right? So I'm adding text. This text will be score, table. What you see right now, you have two rectangles. It looks like you have two cameras in your project. When you go to the game, they overlap. It means that if I find this text, I move it in to the canvas, the second rectangle is actually canvas. You should see it over here, right? Tiny. It looks like a few black dots right now, but we'll modify it. So score label, we'll change the color, make it more visible. Let's make it white. Also, let's make it bigger. And we'll have to scale this and move it to the top because I want this label to be in the corner, right? Here it is. You see that this rectangle, the canvas rectangle, represents the rectangle of your screen as well, right? Okay, what's the text that I want to display? Score 0. That's for now. I can duplicate. Control-D allows me to duplicate those labels. So I will have a second label here. This label will be live label. Live. Number of lives. We'll start with 3 lives. Here it is. Right. I can change the position of the text. So it's nice and balanced, right? One is sticking to right, the other one is sticking to the left. What else do I need? I need two more labels. One of them will be my high score, and the other one will be a game over label. So let's say this one will be game over label. It will be big. It will be red, centered. Game over. Game over label. The other one also will be bigger, not as big as a game over label, but quite big too, centered, a little bit lower. And this one will show high score. Right now it will be 0. You can change the font color. Right, so those are our labels. And the last thing that we want to add to Canvas is a button. To add a button that will be used to reset. It will be used to reset the game, restart. Okay. In the button, by default, inside you have also a text that you can modify. You can make it bigger. Restart. Again, you can change the font, you can change the color, and a few other things. Let's make it green. Let's make the background for our button a little bit more transparent. That's my design. Right, I have game over, I have the high score, the restart button. Now what I have to do in my script that I created, the game controller script, I didn't create it, I will create it. I will have to connect these two things, right? So I will use a lot of variables right now to keep track of those elements. Let's create a script. Game controller. This script will be attached to the canvas. Come on. I've attached the script to the canvas. I'm opening it right now. And let's start editing. To be able to access UI elements, I need to add a using statement using Unity Engine UI. That's one thing. I'll be also restarting the scene when I press the button. And to be able to do that, I'll be using Unity Engine Scene Management. Right? Make sure that you have these two using statements added to your script. I told you that the game controller will keep track of points and lives. So let's add two variables that will be used solely for that purpose. Right? So private int score, by default it is 0, and private int life, by default it will be 3. For these two guys, we'll create also a public property. So we will have proper getter and setter for each of them. And we'll use the setter to trigger update in the UI. right? So I will define a public int score with getter, and with a setter. Setter will simply get a new value, right? And in a second, when we have all the references, we'll be also updating UI. Same thing for live. Public int live. Getter is simple. Return live. Setter will be more busy. In the setter, we'll set a new value. We'll update UI as well. We also will check if it's game over, right? So we'll have this if statement checking if live is less equal to 0, then game over, else it means that we have to really update UI, right? That's what we can do. Okay, so we have that. Now it's time to add all those variables for UI elements, right? So we'll be using, like I said, lots of serialized fields. Text is the type that represents a label in UI. And we'll need live label. We'll need another one for score. We need another one for game over. Another one for high score. And finally, we'll need a button. We'll need a button reset. All right, so live label, score label, game over label, high score label, and reset button. How do we update UI? We'll simply set the value of the text in the label, right? So if I'm updating score, then score label.text will be equal to some text, right? Score plus underscore score, right? That's the value. For live, I will do exactly the same thing. Live label.text equals live live. Okay, so that's one thing. If we right now we save this, build and test. Let's go to Canvas. Let's set before testing it, right? We have to set all those missing references, right? So we have to take the score label and drag it to the score, live label life label, game over, high score, displays, and then the button to the button. Now I can play, and I can see what happens. Nothing happens because my default values are 0 and 3, right? So it's exactly the text that I set. Right now, if I change it here, let's say life label, I'll set it to 0, but if I play, it should say 3. Or not, because I'm not updating UI yet, right? So we'll do it in a second. Okay, about updating and setting up. You see that right now, if I play the button, if I play the game, I have this constant game over state, right? I want these things from the center of the screen to disappear when I play the game. On the other hand, when it is game over, I want the score and life to disappear, right? So I'll be switching between these two. Let's write two functions that will do that for us. So first, let's add an init function, initialize function, private void initialize. This function will make things disappear, game over, high score, and button. And we'll make sure that we are starting from square one, right? So the score value is set to 0, lives are set to the default value, and so on, right? So score equals 0, life equals 3. Now let's make the label disappear. Game over label, game object dot set active false. Remember the lecture, we've been talking about this function. It disables the object. The object disappears, but not only that, it also does not interact with anything. We'll do the same thing for high score. Game object set active false. And we'll do the same thing also for the reset button. Reset button, game object set active false. We want to make sure that two other labels are visible. So life label, game object set active true, and score label, game object set active true. We'll have another function that will do this, switching the flags, right? So it will be called game over. Private void game over. Exactly the same stuff, but in the opposite direction, right? So true, true, and true, and these two should disappear. False, false. Initialize should be called on start. Game over should be called here, right? When life counter is less than 0, or less or equal 0, we say game over. And save this. Field, save, test. That's what I want to have, right? I'm starting the game, and I can fly right away. Now, we want to count points, right? The script that is really reacting to collisions is playing collision. This script needs to talk to the game controller to be able to update UI and tell, okay, here is a new point, here is a new thing, or you're losing lives. So what we'll do, again, we'll create a connection between these two scripts. Serialized field, game controller. That will be our connection. Simply a reference, right, to the script. We'll use this guy in our updates, right? If this is an island, then game controller score plus equal, well, let's be generous, 100 points per island. If this is a rocket, enemy, life, minus, right? Or minus equal 1 if you want to be very explicit. Let's see. Let's test. The script is attached. Sorry, the collision script is attached to the plane. Right? We have to find it. Plane collision. Here. It needs the game controller, the reference, right? Game controller is a script that is attached to canvas. What we can do, we can get the whole game object and just drag it here. Unity will figure out the connection, right? We'll get the proper component. Play. You see that user interface is updated. I get points, I lose lives. I can't reset yet. Let's do that. First, we have to go to our game controller script, and we have to add a new function. It has to be a public function. Remember, we've been talking in the lecture about handlers, right? Public void reset button click. That's the name, no parameters, and really simple function, just one line. Scene manager dot load scene manager dot get active scene dot name. Make sure that you can see everything. I'm taking the name of the current scene, and I'm reloading it. Okay. Let's save this, and let's go back to Unity because I have to create a connection between button and this script. So let's select the button from the hierarchy. Scroll down. You have this on-click area, the table, right? It's empty right now. List is empty. You hit the plus button. Now it allows you to select an object that has script attached. It can be a button itself, but in our case, it will be canvas. So let it be canvas. From the combo, I can find the script that I want, game controller, and I have reset button click. I created a connection. I can play and test. And we start over, right? So we have UI. This is working. We have enemies. We have islands. We can get points. We can lose lives. We can play over and over again. One thing that I want to add, something that we discussed in the lecture, is animations, right? We did, and right now we'll add a simple animation, one state, nothing fancy. Later in the next game, we'll be playing a little bit more with mechanism and changing states and so on. Right now, what I want to do when I collide with the rocket, I want to play animation, make it disappear. Right, so that's my goal. In sprites, I have this explosion sprite. I will select all frames from this atlas, and I will drag them to the scene. First thing it asks me, because I have multiple frames, so Unity is smart enough to figure out, okay, this is an animation. It asks me what to do, where I want to save it. I want to save it in a new folder, animations. And I will call it explosion. That's my animation. Let's move everything up so we can see what happens with this animation. First of all, it's too big, right? That's a big boom. Let's make it smaller. That's more or less the size that we want. If you play it right now, just keep playing, right? Keep blowing. Okay, we have animations here. The asset that looks like a play button, this is actual clip, right? This is the sequence of frames. And in properties in the inspector, you have loop time, right? You want to make it disabled, right? You don't want the loop in your explosion. So that's one thing. The second thing is we want to add this object only when there is a collision, right? And then we want it to play and go away. Let's start with the second part, making it disappear. I will need a script to do that. So I'm creating a new script. I will call it explosion. I will add this script to my explosion object that I have in the scene. And this script, again, will be very simple. I think that's the simplest script that you ever did in this class. One function, public void destroy me. Destroy game object. You don't need start, you don't need update. Shortest script in this class.
There's a typo on the name of the method. Missing an R after T on the name of the method. But we avoid this method.
Okay. Field. Got this. Let's go back to Unity. To our explosion object. Now, I'm going to open animation window. Animation window, as I told you in the lecture, right? It shows you the timeline and different frames for this animation. What I want to do after the last frame, I have 4 of them. Here after the last one, I want to add event. You have the button here, or you can just right-click in the gray on this gray bar and say add animation event. Adds little bookmark there, and you can select the function. Only one function we have, destroy me. That's exactly what we select. What happens then? When you play, animation plays, right? So you go frame, 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 frame. You find the event, you trigger the function. What the function does, destroys the object, right? Let's save. And it's also a good time to save our animation as a prefab. Let's rename it explosion. And let's save this as a prefab. Why as a prefab? Because I will be instantiating it multiple times. And I don't need this one that is sitting in the middle, right? I can show you that this script actually works because it disappears, right, from the hierarchy. Right now, I don't need it. Bye-bye. What I need to do, I need to modify my collision script. Plain collision needs to know that there is an animation that we want to play, right? So another serialized field, game object, explosion, and we'll use this game object in our collision, right? We're losing life. Before we reset, or even after we reset the rocket, before will be better. We want to instantiate explosion. That creates the object, but we want this object to we want it to appear in a specific position, right? There are different versions of instantiate. You can pass parameters like position and rotation, or you can simply get component transform, capital T, dot position. That's the position of my new object. And I want it to be equal to the position of other game object. That's the rocket. Get component transform dot position. I'm instantiating it and putting it in the same position as rocket. I'm doing it before the reset, because if I do it after, it will appear on top of the screen. Right? Saving, building, testing. Wait. What did I forget? I didn't assign a value to the explosion prefab, right? So I did it right now, and it should work. We'll finish at that point. I want to leave some room for questions. I will stop recording right now, and we'll discuss other things. Okay, so I'm